"Excuse me, sir, the delivery entrance is around the back." The security guard didn't see a billionaire. He saw a black man in a hoodie. He didn't realize that the man he was turning away didn't just own the penthouse, he owned the debt on the entire building. Welcome to San Francisco. A city of fog, ghosts, and gold. A place where a garage startup can turn into a trillion-dollar empire overnight, and where the rent rivals the GDP of a small nation. But look closer. Beneath the headlines of tech bros and IPOs, there is a secret history. A story of resilience, ownership, and cold, hard capital built by black men who refuse to be pushed out of the frame. These aren't just athletes who signed big checks. These are the landlords. The venture capitalists. The kings of the Bay. From the grimy streets of Oakland to the private, gated lanes of Atherton, we are counting down the 10 richest black men in the San Francisco Bay Area. And you need to stick around for number 1. He is a man who didn't just change the game. He changed the geometry of his sport and built a financial fortress that will last for generations. Before we reveal the kings, make sure you subscribe to Silent Genius Stories for more tales of underestimated power. Now, let's peel back the fog. Number 10. Ryan Coogler. The Hollywood visionary of the East Bay. They told him wealth was written in code. He proved it was written in a screenplay. Ryan Coogler is the cinematic soul of Oakland. He didn't grow up on red carpets, he grew up in the soil of the East Bay, soaking in a culture of grit and survival. Instead of chasing the NFL, he picked up a camera. His debut, Fruitvale Station, wasn't just a movie. It was a testimony. A tragedy made on a shoestring budget. But it handed him the keys to the kingdom. Marvel gave him Black Panther, and he delivered a $1.3 billion cultural phenomenon. But here is the genius part. He didn't just make Disney rich. He leveraged that success to found Proximity Media. He owns his intellectual property. He operates outside the LA bubble, keeping his creative engine in the Bay. He proves that the most valuable asset in San Francisco isn't a microchip. It's a vision. Number 9. Danny Glover. The foundation. If Coogler is the new face, Glover is the ground he stands on. Born to postal workers, Glover is old-school San Francisco nobility. The world sees Roger Murtaugh from Lethal Weapon, a role that generated hundreds of millions. Those residuals are the bedrock. But Glover's portfolio is the real weapon. He has been a quiet investor and producer for decades, backing films that win at Cannes and Sundance. He bought real estate in the Haight-Ashbury before it was a tourist trap. He sits on boards, advises unions, and holds a level of political weight that money cannot buy. He walks with kings, but he kept his footing in the Fillmore. Number 8. E40. Earl Stevens. The tycoon of Vallejo. Forget Napa Valley. The real intoxicating success story is Earl Stevens. To call him a rapper is an insult. He is a vertically integrated conglomerate. Long before Jay-Z became a billionaire, E40 was selling tapes out of his trunk, refusing to sign bad deals. He kept his masters. In the music industry, owning your masters is the difference between a worker and a boss. But his genius pivot was alcohol. Earl Stevens selections. Slurricane. E40 Tequila. These aren't vanity projects. They are supply chain beasts fighting for shelf space at Costco and Safeway. He invests in tech, food, and spirits with the same rapid-fire precision as his lyrics. He proved the hi-fi movement wasn't a dance. It was a business model. Number 7. Marshawn Lynch. The Beast Mode Empire. They thought he was difficult because he wouldn't talk to the media. He wasn't being difficult, he was protecting his IP. Marshawn Lynch turned a nickname into a diversified holding company. He saved his NFL salary and lived off endorsements, building a war chest for retirement. He owns the Beast Mode apparel line, a global brand. He owns Rob Ben's restaurant. He has stakes in the Seattle Kraken and the Oakland Roots. He buys back the block to fight gentrification, ensuring black businesses have a home in Oakland. He rides a BMX bike to board meetings and answers to no one. He is the richest man in the room who doesn't care if you know he's rich. Number 6. Andre Iguodala, the Silicon Valley swingman. While his teammates were playing video games on the team plane, Iguodala was reading pitch decks. He realized that wearing a Golden State Warriors jersey gave him access to the most exclusive club on earth, the venture capitalists of Sand Hill Road. He didn't just smile and wave. He co-founded a VC firm. His portfolio: Zoom, Datadog, PagerDuty. He bought into Zoom before the pandemic made it a utility, securing a return on investment that is staggering. He created the Players Technology Summit, teaching other black athletes that they aren't just labor, they are capital. Number 5. Tony West, the fixer. We leave the court and enter the boardroom. Tony West operates where the laws are written. As the chief legal officer of Uber, and formerly of PepsiCo, he is one of the highest-paid executives in the world. When Uber was a toxic mess of scandals, they called Tony. He guided them through a massive IPO. His stock awards alone are in the tens of millions. Married to the vice president's sister, he lives in a world of private security and power brokering. He isn't a founder. He is the man billionaires call when their empires are under siege. Number 4. Barry Bonds, the home run king of real estate. Before Steph, there was Barry, a force of nature who hit baseballs into the bay with violence. Bonds earned over $172 million in salary, but unlike many, he didn't blow it. He hoarded it. He poured it into Bay Area real estate when prices were a fraction of what they are today. He owns a portfolio in the most expensive zip codes in America. His wealth is old money by athlete standards. He is a statue, immovable, wealthy, and forever part of the landscape. Number 3. Michael Seibel, the gatekeeper. If you want to know the future, you don't ask a psychic. You ask Michael Seibel. As a managing director at Y Combinator, he sits at the head of the table for the world's most powerful startup accelerator. He co-founded Twitch, selling it to Amazon for nearly $1 billion. Then he sold SocialCam. 2 exits. 2 fortunes. Now, he holds equity in hundreds of startups that will define the next decade. He is one of the few black men holding the keys to the venture capital vault, proving the greatest wealth is the ability to say yes to the future. Number 2. David Drummond, the corporate titan. The numbers just jumped from millions to hundreds of millions. David Drummond was Google's first outside lawyer. He was there when it was a garage project. He rose to become the chief legal officer of Alphabet. For 2 decades, he navigated the acquisitions of Android and YouTube. His compensation was astronomical, but his stock accumulation was legendary. When he left, he cashed out hundreds of millions of dollars. He helped build the engine that organizes the world's information, and he took a massive slice of the pie with him. Number 1. Stephen Curry, the billion-dollar brand. The baby-faced assassin. Steph Curry is not just a basketball player. He is a corporation. With a net worth racing toward $1 billion, he has signed contracts worth over $400 million in guaranteed cash. But the real money is the equity. He has his own subsidiary brand with Under Armour, a deal. Stop looking at the microchips. Forget the IPOs for a second. Everyone thinks the only way to become a king in San Francisco is to invent an app that delivers sushi by drone. They are wrong. While the tech bros were busy coding in their garages, one kid from the East Bay was rewriting reality itself, not with Python, but with a camera lens. He didn't just enter the building, he rearranged the furniture and made Disney pay for the renovation. Welcome back to the countdown of the Kings of the Bay. We are diving deep into the pockets and the minds of the 10 richest black men in the San Francisco Bay Area. These aren't just millionaires, they are architects of culture. And kicking off our top 10 is a man who proves that a screenplay can be worth more than a software patent. Number 10. Ryan Coogler, the Hollywood visionary who refused to leave the neighborhood. San Francisco is a city of fog and illusions. It tells you that to be wealthy, you have to be sterile. You have to live in a glass box and talk about synergy. Ryan Coogler looked at that model and laughed. Born in the heart of Oakland, Coogler grew up in the real Bay Area, the one far removed from the Tesla showrooms and the private clubs of Atherton. He was an athlete first, a football player grinding it out at St. Mary's College and Sacramento State. He was built for the gridiron, destined to be just another body on the field. But somewhere between the tackles and the touchdowns, a silent genius woke up. He realized that the person holding the ball is a worker, but the person holding the camera is a god. He traded the helmet for a viewfinder. And he didn't start by asking for permission. His debut film, Fruitvale Station, wasn't a summer blockbuster. It was a raw, bleeding, open wound. It told the tragic, true story of Oscar Grant, a local boy killed by police. It was filmed with grit, community support, and a budget that wouldn't cover the catering on a Marvel set. But when the lights went up at Sundance, the world didn't just clap. They wept. Coogler proved that the most valuable asset in the Bay Area wasn't data. It was emotion. If you respect a man who builds his empire on his own history, make sure to like this video and comment "respect" down below. This is where the story shifts from art to empire. Hollywood saw a talented indie director. They thought they could hire him, use him, and discard him. They handed him the keys to a franchise called Creed, and he revitalized a dead legacy. But that was just the warm-up. Disney came knocking with a project that everyone said was a risk. A black superhero movie. They wanted a director. Coogler gave them a cultural phenomenon. He took the reins of Black Panther and didn't just make a movie, he built a nation. Wakanda wasn't just on the screen, it was a signal fire. The film grossed over $1.3 billion worldwide. Let that sink in. $1.3 billion. That success didn't just make Disney rich, it gave Coogler something more dangerous than money. It gave him leverage. He held the industry hostage with his competence. When you deliver $1 billion, you don't ask for a seat at the table anymore. You buy the restaurant. Coogler didn't pack his bags for a mansion in Beverly Hills. He stayed put. He founded Proximity Media, a production company that allows him to own his intellectual property. This is the difference between being rich and being wealthy. A salary is what they pay you to leave, equity is what you keep forever. Living in the Bay Area allows him to operate outside the toxic Los Angeles bubble, maintaining the authentic perspective that makes his work so priceless. His net worth is now estimated in the tens of millions, growing not just through directing fees, which are astronomical, but through producing credits on sequels, television series for Disney+, and original investments. He represents the new creative capital of the Bay. A storyteller who took the narrative of the streets, the pain, the joy, the complexity of Oakland, and sold it to the world for billions, while keeping a massive piece of the pie for himself. He proves that the geometry of wealth in San Francisco is changing. You don't need to be a landlord of a building if you are the landlord of the culture. But Ryan Coogler is just the new guard. He is the prince of the East Bay. But before the prince can rule, he must learn from the kings who came before him. There is another man on this list. A man who was fighting for justice and cashing Hollywood checks before Coogler was even born. A man whose wealth is hidden in plain sight, buried under decades of activism and blockbuster action movies. You know his face, but you have no idea how much he actually owns. If you are enjoying this deep dive into hidden empires, make sure to subscribe to Silent Genius Stories right now so you don't miss the top spot. Coogler changed the game, but the man at number 9 built the stadium. He is old money. He is San Francisco nobility. And when you find out how he turned a catchphrase into a real estate empire, you'll never look at Lethal Weapon the same way again. Wait until you hear what happened next. Who let this radical into the boardroom? That is the question the Hollywood elites whispered when they realized the man they hired to play a cop was actually a revolutionary in disguise. They thought they were just buying an action star. They thought they were signing a contract for a franchise. But they were wrong. They were funding a movement. Welcome to Chapter 3 of our deep dive into the Black Kings of the San Francisco Bay. We are counting down the richest, most powerful men who refused to move when the tech wave tried to wash them away. And today, we are talking about number 9. The man who looked at the script, took the check, and used it to buy back his own history. Before we reveal the architecture of his empire, hit that subscribe button to Silent Genius Stories. We are documenting the blueprint of black wealth, one legend at a time. Comment, "I'm listening," if you are ready to learn how the game is really played. Number 9. Danny Glover. The activist. The icon. The San Francisco native. To understand his money, you have to understand his soil. While the other men on this list moved to the Bay Area to chase the gold rush of silicon and servers, Danny Glover didn't have to chase anything. He is the dirt under the fingernails of this city. Born to postal workers, he wasn't raised in luxury. He was raised in the trenches of the NAACP. He comes from old-school San Francisco nobility, the kind that isn't measured in stock options, but in picket lines and community centers. Most of you know the face. You know the voice. You know him as Roger Murtaugh from the Lethal Weapon franchise. "I'm too old for this." That line didn't just become a meme, it became a mint. The franchise generated hundreds of millions of dollars at the global box office. It was the kind of commercial juggernaut that usually swallows an actor whole, turning them into a caricature of themselves. The residuals alone from those films provide a bedrock of wealth that most A-list celebrities only dream of. Every time that movie plays on cable at 2 a.m. in Tokyo, or streams in London, a deposit hits Danny Glover's account. But here is where the genius kicks in. Here is the silence within the noise. Danny Glover didn't take that Hollywood money and buy a private island. He didn't disappear into a cloud of luxury smoke. He took the capital from the system and weaponized it against the narrative. He became a quiet, strategic investor in stories that the mainstream refused to tell. He co-founded Louvre Films. This wasn't a vanity project. This wasn't a celebrity slapping his name on a cologne. This was a production company dedicated to historical relevance and social purpose. He understood something fundamental about wealth. Money is just fuel. If you don't have an engine, you're just burning cash. Glover's engine was truth. He backed independent cinema that won awards at Cannes and Sundance, using the profits from an action movie to fund high art that challenged the status quo. He balanced the scales. He took the gun out of Roger Murtaugh's hand and replaced it with a mirror, forcing society to look at itself. And then there is the real estate. In a city where the median rent can rival the GDP of a small nation, owning land is an act of war. Danny Glover's footprint in San Francisco is historic. He lived in the Haight-Ashbury district long before it was a tourist trap selling tie-dye shirts to visitors. His connection to the city's property market goes back to an era when owning a Victorian home was a community standard, a way to shelter your family, not a luxury status symbol to flip for a profit. While the tech billionaires build glass towers that look down on the city, Glover owns the history on the ground floor. His net worth is estimated around $12 million. On paper, compared to the billionaires we will get to later in this countdown, it might look modest. But do not let the number fool you. His cultural equity is incalculable. You cannot put a price tag on being the bridge between the city's radical past and its wealthy present. He sits on boards. He advises unions. He walks into rooms where policy is made, and the temperature changes. He proves that you can walk with kings, dine with movie stars, and still keep your footing in the Fillmore. He is the proof that the most valuable asset in San Francisco isn't always a microchip or an algorithm. Sometimes, it is a vision. A vision that says, "I am not moving." Danny Glover represents the conscience of Bay Area wealth. He shows us that you can secure the bag without losing your soul. But as we move up the list, the game changes. We leave the world of activism and enter the world of pure, unadulterated hustle. We are leaving the Victorian homes of the Haight and crossing the water to Vallejo. The next man on our list didn't just buy the block, he bottled it. He turned a slang word into a supply chain and a dance move into a dynasty. You think you know what hustle looks like? You haven't seen anything yet. Wait until you hear how a bottle of wine became a multi-million-dollar empire. They told him he didn't belong in the vineyard. They looked at his oversized glasses, his heavy slang, and the gold around his neck, and they laughed. They thought he was just another rapper looking for a quick endorsement check to blow on cars and jewelry. They didn't realize they were looking at a shark swimming in a pool of goldfish. Number 8. Earl Stevens. The Tycoon of Vallejo. The world knows him as E40, the rapid-fire lyricist who gave the Bay Area its unique slang and its swagger. But if you think E40 is just an entertainer, you are missing the point entirely. He is a masterclass in independent economics. While the rest of the industry was begging for record deals, Earl Stevens was selling tapes out of the trunk of his car in the grit of Vallejo, California. He refused to be a slave to a major label. He founded Sick-Witted Records in 1989, making a decision that would define his entire financial destiny. He kept his masters. In the music business, this is the difference between being an employee and being the CEO. Every time you hear a Bay Area anthem like, "Tell Me When to Go," rattle the speakers at a stadium, E40 isn't just getting applause. He is getting paid. He owns the sound. He owns the publishing. He owns the legacy. But the music was just the seed capital. What he did next didn't just change his tax bracket, it embarrassed the gatekeepers of high society. Move over, Napa Valley. The real intoxicating success story of Northern California isn't a Merlot from a French chateau owned by old money. It is a bottle of Earl Stevens selections. E40 looked at the beverage industry and saw a massive gap. He realized that hip-hop culture drove the sales of vodka, cognac, and champagne, yet black owners were almost non-existent in the supply chain. They were the consumers, never the distributors. So, he didn't just slap his name on a bottle of cheap vodka like a vanity project. He studied the game. He learned about distribution logistics, shelf space wars, and fermentation. He launched Earl Stevens Selections, a line of wines that included Mangoscato and Function Red Blend. The critics rolled their eyes. Then, the numbers came in. He followed the wine with Slurricane, a pre-mixed cocktail inspired by one of his hit songs. It became a viral sensation, disappearing from shelves faster than retailers could stock it. Then came E40 Tequila. These aren't just merchandise sold at concert venues. These are legitimate consumer packaged goods fighting for, and winning, premium shelf space in major retailers like Costco, Bevmo, and Safeway across the entire country. Imagine walking into a Costco in the suburbs, a place usually reserved for the quiet elite, and seeing the face of a Vallejo rapper staring back at you from a pallet of best-selling wine. That is not just success. That is an invasion. Earl Stevens proved that the hi-fi movement wasn't just a dance, it was a scalable business model. His net worth is conservatively estimated in the range of $20 million, but that number is deceiving. That accounts for public assets. It doesn't account for the cash flow of a privately held liquor empire that cuts out the middleman. It doesn't account for his venture capital plays. He was an incredibly early investor in the audio app Clubhouse, recognizing the value of the platform before the tech giants caught on. He invests in what he knows: communication, celebration, and culture. He is sector agnostic. He puts money into tech, food, and spirits with the same rapid-fire precision he uses in his lyrics. He didn't wait for a seat at the table in Napa Valley. He brought his own chair, his own bottle, and eventually, he bought the table. If you respect a man who bet on himself when the world told him to settle for less, hit that subscribe button for Silent Genius stories right now. We are documenting the blueprint of ownership. Comment, respect the hustle, if you believe artists should own their masters. Because E40 teaches us one undeniable lesson: the most valuable asset in San Francisco isn't always a microchip or a line of code. Sometimes, it is the audacity to sell your own culture back to the world at a premium price. He is the bridge between the streets and the boardroom, a man who walks into meetings with CEOs and leaves with distribution deals that would make a Harvard MBA's head spin. He proved that you can wear a hoodie and still be the smartest businessman in the room. But as we leave the vineyards of Vallejo and cross the bridge back into the heart of Oakland, the game changes again. We are moving from the man who mastered the independent hustle to a man who turned physical brutality into a financial art form. A man who became famous for refusing to speak, yet built a brand that screams louder than anyone else. Stick around, because number 7 is about to run through a wall. Wait until you hear how he turned a fine into a fortune. They expected him to crash. They expected him to burn. In a league where 78% of players go broke within 2 years of retirement, the establishment looked at Marshawn Lynch and saw a liability. He was too raw, too Oakland, too unfiltered for the polished, corporate machinery of the NFL. They saw a thug. He saw a trademark. While the critics were dissecting his silence in press conferences, Marshawn was quietly executing one of the most brilliant financial plays in the history of professional sports. He didn't just run through defensive lines. He ran through the very economic model that was designed to keep athletes rich for a moment and poor for a lifetime. Welcome to Chapter 5. This is the story of the beast who refused to spend a dime. Subscribe to Silent Genius Stories right now if you respect a man who plays by his own rules. Let's talk about the money, because the numbers don't lie, but they certainly shocked the world. Over the course of a bruising, violent career, Marshawn Lynch earned millions in NFL salary. The checks were massive. The temptation to live the baller lifestyle was suffocating. But Marshawn did something that made financial advisors weep with joy and luxury car dealerships weep with despair. He reportedly didn't touch his NFL salary. Not a single cent of it. For over a decade, he lived entirely off his endorsement deals, banking the millions from his contracts into a war chest that was accumulating interest while his peers were accumulating debt. This wasn't just saving, this was a siege mentality. He was preparing for a war that started the day he hung up his cleats. But his genius wasn't just in what he saved, it was in what he said. Or rather, what he didn't say. Picture the scene. Super Bowl Media Day. The biggest stage on earth. Dozens of cameras, microphones shoved in his face, the world waiting for a slip-up. The league threatened him with massive fines if he didn't talk to the press. So he showed up. He sat down. And he uttered a single sentence, repeated over and over again, with the rhythmic precision of a monk. I'm just here so I won't get fined. The media called it petulant. Marshawn called his patent lawyer. He trademarked the phrase. He turned a moment of defiance into a revenue stream that printed money every time a fan bought a t-shirt. He took the NFL's weapon, the fine, and turned it into his own personal ATM. That is not just business. That is economic judo. Comment beast mode below if you think the NFL underestimated him. While the tech billionaires of San Francisco were building apps to disrupt taxi services, Marshawn was building a physical empire to disrupt gentrification. He saw his hometown of Oakland changing. He saw the soul of the city being priced out by the very wealth we talked about in previous chapters. Instead of running to the hills, he bought the block. He launched Beast Mode apparel, but he didn't just sell it online. He opened flagship stores right in the heart of Oakland. He employed his community. He created a supply chain that he controlled from top to bottom. This wasn't a vanity project with his name stamped on a cheap product made overseas. This was a diversified holding company. He became a restaurateur, taking over a legendary soul food spot to preserve the culinary heritage of his neighborhood. He didn't put on a suit to do it. He rode his BMX bike to board meetings, popping wheelies past Teslas, walking into rooms filled with venture capitalists while wearing a hoodie and a beanie. And he commanded the room. Why? Because he had the one thing money can't buy, liquidity and freedom. He didn't need their funding. He didn't need their approval. He was the richest man in the room because he was the only one who could walk away without losing a thing. His portfolio expanded into technology, investing in startups like FAM, a group video chat app. He bought equity in professional sports teams, becoming a minority owner of the NHL's Seattle Kraken and the USL's Oakland Roots. He proved that you don't have to code in Python to be a tech mogul in the Bay Area. You just have to have the vision to spot the next big thing and the capital to back it up. He became the bridge between the streets of Vallejo and the boardrooms of Silicon Valley, teaching an entire generation of young black athletes that they are not just labor. They are capital. Marshawn Lynch stands today with an estimated net worth north of $35 million, but his true value is incalculable. He shattered the stereotype of the dumb jock. He proved that you can be authentic, you can be hood, and you can be a financial genius all at the same time. He saved his money so he could save his city. He is the Emperor of Oakland, the man who built a fortress out of silence and a kingdom out of grit. But as impressive as the beast is, there is another player in the Bay. A man who sat on the bench with a laptop, turning the locker room into a venture capital firm. You think Marshawn's savings were impressive? Wait until you hear about the swingman who turned a Zoom call into a 9-figure fortune. Mini cliffhanger. Shut up and dribble. That is what the critics say. That is the box they built for the black athlete. They want the entertainment, the sweat, and the highlight reels, but they do not want the opinion, and they certainly do not want the ownership. They expect the athlete to buy the Ferrari, crash the Ferrari, and go bankrupt 5 years after retirement. It is a tale as old as professional sports itself. But in the golden locker room of the Golden State Warriors, one man looked at that script and burned it to ashes. He wasn't just playing defense on the court, he was playing offense on his portfolio. While his teammates were glued to video games at 30,000 feet, screaming over a match of Call of Duty, Andre Iguodala was sitting in the back of the private jet, silence around him, reading a pitch deck for a software company you hadn't heard of yet. They called him the adult in the room for the Warriors dynasty. But on the streets of Silicon Valley, he became something far more dangerous to the status quo, the gatekeeper. Andre Iguodala, the Silicon Valley swingman, didn't just win championships. He conquered Sand Hill Road. Before we reveal the deal that made him a tech legend, pause for a second. Why do you think so many athletes go broke? Is it bad advice or bad habits? Comment bad advice or bad habits below. And if you love stories about flipping the script, make sure to subscribe to Silent Genius Stories right now. San Francisco is a trap for the wealthy. It seduces you with expensive dinners and million-dollar views. Most athletes who land in the Bay Area treat the tech titans sitting courtside as fans. They sign their jerseys, take the selfie, and walk away. Iguodala saw them differently. He didn't see fans. He saw mentors. He saw the keys to a kingdom that had been locked to people who looked like him. He realized that playing for the Warriors gave him access to the most exclusive financial club on planet Earth. The venture capital ecosystem. He didn't want a free car. He wanted a meeting. He leveraged his fame to get into rooms with top firms like Andreessen Horowitz. Imagine the scene. A room full of guys in Patagonia vests, Ivy League degrees, and soft hands, staring at a 6'6" NBA Finals MVP. They expected him to ask for a sponsorship. Instead, he asked about their cap tables. He asked about their Series A projections. He didn't just smile and nod, he learned the language of the valley. He realized that a salary, no matter how fat, is taxed and spent. But equity. Equity is how you build an empire that outlives your knees. He co-founded a venture capital firm, Moss Try, to formalize his attack. His portfolio began to read like a prophecy of the next decade. Pager duty. Datadog. Allbirds. But his masterstroke was a little video conferencing company that nobody really cared about at the time. The founder was a quiet guy named Eric Yuan. The company was called Zoom. Iguodala got in early. He saw the utility when others saw a crowded market. Then, the world changed. The pandemic hit. The economy froze. And Zoom became the oxygen of the global workforce. The valuation exploded. Iguodala's initial investment multiplied by 10, then 20. He wasn't just rich anymore, he was wealthy in a way that doesn't require a ball to go through a hoop. His net worth shot north of $50 million, but the money was secondary to the message. He shattered the glass ceiling for every athlete coming behind him. He looked around the league and saw young black men being exploited for their labor, generating billions for owners while they risked their bodies. So, he built a bridge. He created the Players Technology Summit. He started dragging his teammates into these boring meetings. He forced CEOs and point guards into the same room, essentially teaching the next generation how to weaponize their capital. He showed the world that a black athlete in San Francisco isn't just labor. He is capital. He proved that the smartest play of his career wasn't the alley-oop to Steph Curry, nor the strip on LeBron James. It was the Series A round. He didn't just want a seat at the table, he bought the table. But Andre was operating in the light. He was the public face of this financial revolution. There are others in San Francisco, however, who operate in the shadows. Men who clean up the messes that billionaires make. Our next genius isn't an athlete. He is the man you call when the entire company is burning to the ground and the feds are knocking at the door. Wait until you hear how he saved the most hated company in America. Who actually cleans up the mess when a $60 billion company sets itself on fire? Most people think the power in Silicon Valley belongs to the kid in the hoodie writing code in a basement. They are wrong. The real power belongs to the man in the bespoke suit who walks into a room, clears his throat, and tells the billionaires they are going to prison if they don't listen to him. Enter Tony West. He isn't a founder. He isn't an engineer. He is the ultimate fixer. And in a city of dreamers, he is the man who deals in cold, hard, legal reality. Subscribe to Silent Genius Stories for more deep dives into the unknown titans of industry. Now, let's look at the man who holds the keys to the gig economy. When Tony West walked into the headquarters of Uber, the company was not just in trouble, it was radioactive. The previous leadership had built a culture of move fast and break things, but they had broken too much. Laws were ignored. Scandals were leaking like water from a sieve. Investors were panicking. The company needed a savior, but not a tech savior. They needed a gladiator who understood the law better than the government did. They hired Tony West. And they paid him a fortune to save them from themselves. But to understand his wealth, you have to understand his steel. West didn't start in a boardroom. He was the Associate Attorney General of the United States, the third highest-ranking official in the Department of Justice. He spent years hunting down corporate fraud and protecting civil rights. He saw the belly of the beast. He knew exactly how the government destroys companies that play loose with the rules. So when he crossed over to the private sector, first to PepsiCo and then to Uber, he wasn't just a lawyer. He was a general entering a war zone with the enemy's playbook in his pocket. Comment boss moves if you respect the pivot from government to corporate tycoon. West's wealth is staggering because his job is impossible for 99% of the human population. He was the architect of Uber's turnaround. He guided them through one of the most complex IPOs in history. He navigated the labor laws of 100 different countries, fighting battles about whether drivers were employees or contractors. Every time you open that app and a car shows up, you are living in a legal framework designed by Tony West. For his trouble, the compensation was astronomical. We are talking about stock awards and salary packages that rival the GDP of small islands. In just a few short years, he sold Uber stock worth tens of millions of dollars. His liquid assets are conservatively estimated in the $50 million range, but the true extent of his financial power is likely much higher. He sits at the intersection of law, technology, and unimaginable capital. But here is where the story gets even more cinematic. Tony West is one half of a power couple that makes Jay-Z and Beyoncé look like local celebrities. He is married to Maya Harris. That makes him the brother-in-law of Vice President Kamala Harris. Think about that level of access. He has the ear of the White House and the checkbook of Silicon Valley. He lives in a world of private security, high-stakes fundraisers, and closed-door meetings that determine the economic fate of millions of workers. He represents a different kind of San Francisco wealth. He didn't invent a gadget. He didn't code an app. He monetized his intellect. He proved that in a gold rush, the richest man isn't the one digging. It's the one who owns the land and writes the permits. Tony West is the quiet power in the back seat of the black car, watching the city pass by through tinted windows, knowing that he helped write the rules of the road. He is the legal architect of the modern world, a man who took a chaotic, scandalous startup and polished it into a global utility. His wealth is built on strategy, on silence, and on the ability to remain calm when everyone else is losing their minds. He is the number 5 richest black man in the Bay Area, and he answers to no one. But if you think a lawyer wielding tens of millions is impressive, wait until you meet the next man on our list. He didn't need a courtroom to build his fortune. All he needed was a wooden bat and a level of controversy that brought the entire sports world to its knees. Wait until you hear what he bought with his home-run money. They spat at his feet while he was building a throne. That is the only way to describe the man sitting at number 4. Imagine walking into a stadium where 50,000 people are screaming your name, half in adoration, half in pure, unadulterated hate. Imagine being the most feared man in the history of your profession, the kind of force that made grown men tremble on the pitcher's mound, only to be cast out. Exiled. Labeled a pariah. They put an asterisk next to his name. They locked the doors to the Hall of Fame and threw away the key. They thought the story of Barry Bonds ended when he hung up the cleats. They thought the scandal destroyed him. They were wrong. While the world was busy debating his legacy, Barry Bonds was busy buying the land underneath their feet. Who let this villain become the landlord of the most expensive city on earth? Welcome back to the countdown. Subscribe to Silent Genius Stories right now, because we are exposing the truth that the headlines ignore. We are deep in the list of the richest black men in San Francisco, and today, we are looking at the man who turned public exile into private empire. Number 4. The home run king of real estate. Barry Bonds. Most athletes go broke. It is a tragedy we see time and time again. They buy the Ferraris, they trust the wrong entourage, and 5 years post-retirement, they are signing autographs for scraps at a convention center. Barry Bonds is not most athletes. Barry Bonds is a fortress. During his 15 seasons with the San Francisco Giants, he didn't just play baseball. He held the city hostage with his talent. He hit balls into the San Francisco Bay with a violence that captivated the nation. He earned over $172 million in salary alone. That is a staggering figure. But here is the secret that the tabloids missed. Barry Bonds didn't spend it. He hoarded it. He was notoriously guarded, suspicious of outsiders, and shrewd with his circle. While the media painted him as a surly, difficult diva, he was actually operating with the cold calculation of a hedge fund manager. He took that war chest and poured it into the soil. When Barry Bonds looked at the Bay Area, he didn't see just a view, he saw an asset class. He invested heavily in Bay Area real estate when prices were a fraction of the insanity we see today. We aren't talking about a condo downtown. We are talking about the kind of estates that have names. He bought into Hillsborough. He bought into Los Altos Hills. These are zip codes that don't just rival the GDP of small nations. They are among the most exclusive, fortified enclaves in America. He owns a massive estate in the Beverly Park community, maintaining deep roots in Northern California while keeping a foot in the celebrity stronghold of Los Angeles. His net worth sits comfortably above $100 million. But that number feels conservative. That is the on-paper number. The reality is likely far more terrifyingly large. In a city of tech bros and 20-year-old IPO billionaires who made their money overnight, Barry Bonds represents something else. He represents old money by athlete standards. He isn't chasing venture capital deals. He isn't trying to sell you a crypto token. He is sitting on appreciating assets, watching the value of his dirt skyrocket while he enjoys a retirement that is as private and fortified as his batting stance was. There is a poetic justice to it. The league that turned its back on him? They play in a stadium that his bat built. They call it Oracle Park now, but every brick in that stadium was paid for by the ticket sales Barry Bonds generated. He is the living legend, the ghost in the machine. He walks through San Francisco not as a former player, but as a monument. In a city that changes its face every day, where startups rise and fall like the tide, Barry Bonds is a statue. Immovable, wealthy, and forever part of the landscape. He proved that you don't need the world to love you to win. You just need to own the ground they stand on. He took the narrative of the angry black man and flipped it into the reality of the wealthy black tycoon. He didn't ask for permission to stay in San Francisco. He bought his way in. Comment Hall of Fame below if you think the voters got it wrong. Comment asterisk if you think they got it right. But either way, Barry Bonds is laughing all the way to the bank. But the air is getting thinner up here. We are leaving the world of physical sports and entering the digital nervous system of the future. Number 3 is a man who doesn't hit home runs. He decides who gets to play the game. He is the gatekeeper. The man who looked at Amazon and said, "I have something you want." You think Barry Bonds has power? Wait until you hear about the man who holds the keys to the entire internet. Chapter 9. The Gatekeeper of the Next Mark Zuckerberg. Stop looking for the next Mark Zuckerberg on the cover of Forbes. If you truly want to know who is about to change the world, you don't ask a psychic, and you certainly don't ask a banker. You ask Michael Seibel. In the high-stakes, cutthroat ecosystem of Silicon Valley, there are founders, there are investors, and then there are the gatekeepers. Michael Seibel is the latter. He sits at the head of the table at Y Combinator, the most powerful startup accelerator on the planet. He is the man who decides which dream lives to become a unicorn and which pitch deck dies in the inbox. But before he was the kingmaker, he was the hustle. And his story is the blueprint for how to turn vision into a 9-figure reality. We are entering the top 3. This is where the money stops being about salary and starts being about empire. Number 3, Michael Seibel. The Oracle of the Valley. His journey to wealth is the quintessential San Francisco dream, but with a twist that most people miss. He didn't just write code in a darkroom. He built communities. He understood human behavior before he understood profit margins. It started with a crazy idea called Justin.tv. To the average person, it looked ridiculous. A 24/7 broadcast of a guy's life. But Seibel saw something else. He saw the potential for a digital revolution. He saw the pivot. That pivot became Twitch. Yes, that Twitch. The platform that redefined entertainment for an entire generation. The platform where gamers became celebrities and bedrooms became broadcast studios. Amazon saw the vision too. They came knocking with a check that would make anyone's knees weak. Nearly $1 billion. When Amazon acquired Twitch, the world gasped. Michael Seibel didn't just get a payday, he got the seed capital for a personal empire. He wasn't a sole owner, but his equity stake in that exit was the kind of money that changes your zip code, your car, and your family's destiny for the next 100 years. Most people would stop there. One exit. One massive check. Buy a boat, sail to Fiji, and disappear into the sunset. That is what a lucky person does. But Michael Seibel isn't lucky. He is a genius. He went right back to the drawing board and co-founded SocialCam. Critics said lightning doesn't strike twice. They were wrong. He sold SocialCam to Autodesk for $60 million. 2 exits. 2 fortunes. He proved to the skeptics that he wasn't a lottery winner. He was a sharpshooter. He had the Midas touch in a city where most people just have fool's gold. Subscribe to Silent Genius Stories right now if you want to learn how to move like a boss in a world full of workers. Hit that button. We are decoding the blueprint of black wealth. After conquered the startup game as a player, Seibel decided to become the coach. He took the reins as CEO of Y Combinator. This is the factory that produced Airbnb. The factory that produced Dropbox, Stripe, and DoorDash. In his role, Seibel has personal investments and carried interest in hundreds of startups. He sees the companies that will run the world 10 years from now before they even have a logo. He holds the keys to the venture capital vault. His personal net worth is estimated to be over $130 million. But that number is deceptive. It is a floor, not a ceiling. His true wealth lies in his access. His portfolio is a spiderweb of the next trillion-dollar companies. He is one of the few black men in existence who holds this level of power in the venture capital ecosystem. He has championed diversity in tech, not with empty corporate slogans, but by cutting checks, by funding black founders, by mentoring the next generation of genius that looks like him. He proves that the greatest asset in San Francisco isn't just money. It is the ability to say yes to the future. He is the bridge between the streets and the boardroom, proving that you can walk into a meeting in a hoodie and leave as the owner of the block. But as powerful as Seibel is, he is still playing the game of the future. The next man on our list? He helped write the rules of the past, present, and future. He was the legal architect behind the company that knows everything about you. He walked away with a fortune so large it was surrounded by controversy. You have seen the innovators, but wait until you meet the corporate titan who took on the world's biggest tech giant and won. Mini cliffhanger. Who let this lawyer into the engineering meeting? That was the vibe in the room. In a valley worshipped for hoodies, code, and caffeine, a man in a suit is usually the enemy. But they didn't know who they were looking at. They saw a suit. History would see a kingmaker. Imagine being in the room before the room existed. Imagine sitting in a garage in Menlo Park, surrounded by servers made of Lego bricks, looking at two nervous kids named Larry and Sergey. They didn't have a business model. They barely had a name. Most attorneys would have laughed and billed them by the hour. David Drummond didn't bill them. He joined them. And that decision didn't just change his tax bracket. It changed the architecture of the modern world. San Francisco is a city of ghosts. Not the kind that haunt Victorians, but the kind that move billions of dollars without ever making a headline. We are talking about David Drummond. If you walk down the Embarcadero, you might see tourists taking selfies. If you walk through Atherton, you see high walls and security cameras. Drummond lives behind those walls. He is the second richest black man in the Bay Area, and unless you read the fine print of SEC filings, you probably don't even know his name. That is by design. Fame is a liability. Wealth is an asset. And David Drummond has mastered the art of both. Subscribe to Silent Genius Stories right now if you want to know how the real money moves. We are uncovering the titans they don't teach you about in school. Let's strip away the tech jargon and look at the raw power. Drummond wasn't just a lawyer pushing paper. He was the wartime general for Google. When the company wanted to buy Android, a move that would eventually put a supercomputer in the pocket of half the human population, Drummond was the architect. When they bought YouTube, transforming global media forever, Drummond held the pen. For 2 decades, he served as the chief legal officer of Alphabet. He was the shield. When the European Union came with billions in fines, Drummond stood at the gate. When competitors tried to sue the search engine into oblivion, Drummond crushed them. He was the cleaner. He navigated the murky, treacherous waters of global antitrust laws so the engineers could play in the sandbox. But here is where the story gets cold and fascinating. In Silicon Valley, there is a caste system. Founders are gods. Engineers are nobility. And everyone else? They are usually just labor. David Drummond shattered that glass ceiling with a sledgehammer made of stock options. He proved that you don't have to write the code to own the empire. You just have to incorporate it. In a single year, his compensation package hit $47 million. Read that again. Not over a career. In 1 year. While professional athletes destroy their bodies for contracts half that size, Drummond was earning it in boardrooms, wearing a tie, destroying the opposition with his mind. Comment, checkmate, below if you understand the power of strategy over strength. The accumulation of his wealth was quiet, methodical, and relentless. It wasn't flashy. You didn't see him throwing money in the club or buying flashy chains. He was playing a different game. He was stacking equity. Over his 20-year tenure, he accumulated hundreds of thousands of shares of Alphabet stock. This is the kind of wealth that doesn't just buy a house, it buys a zip code. It buys immunity. Conservative estimates place his net worth between $300 million and $500 million. But when you operate at this level, net worth is just a number on a screen. The real currency is freedom. However, every empire has its twilight. And Drummond's exit was as dramatic as his ascent. It wasn't a retirement party with cake and balloons. It was a tactical withdrawal under fire. Controversy erupted. Headlines about workplace relationships and conduct began to crack the pristine armor of the corporate giant. The board investigated. The pressure mounted. In a lesser man's story, this is where they lose everything. This is where the tragedy happens. But David Drummond isn't a tragic figure. He is a financial grandmaster. When he left Alphabet in 2020, he didn't leave in handcuffs. He left with a golden parachute that would make a pharaoh blush. In the months leading up to his departure, he liquidated over $200 million worth of stock. He cashed out. He took the chips off the table. He walked away from the most powerful company on earth, leaving the controversy behind him, but taking the capital with him. He proved that in the high-stakes poker game of Silicon Valley, the house doesn't always win. Sometimes, the guy who built the house walks away with the vault. He now resides in the ultra-private stratosphere of the global elite. He is the proof that being employee number 15 at the right company is worth more than being the CEO of almost anything else. He represents a specific type of San Francisco success, the insider. The man who knows where the bodies are buried because he dug the graves. He helped build the engine that organizes the world's information, and he took a massive slice of that value for himself. But as impressive as a $500 million fortune is, Drummond is still only number 2. He is the prince, but he is not the king. There is one man who stands above him. A man who didn't just navigate the corporate system, but became a brand so powerful it eclipsed the sport he played. A man whose baby face hides a ruthless business instinct that is currently building a billion-dollar legacy in real time. You think you know him. You have seen him on your TV screen. But you have never seen his bank account like this. Wait until you see who holds the crown. The number 1 spot is not who you think it is, or maybe, it's exactly who you fear it is.